I've already found one hidden mechanic for every evolution, so I thought, why not find one hidden mechanic for every champion in the game, since I think it's pretty obvious that Supercell isn't gonna release new champions anytime soon, considering they've gone all in with heroes, so I guess this video will be relevant for a pretty long time. First up is the Mighty Miner. I feel like not a lot of people would expect the Mighty Miner to have so many hidden mechanics, since functionally, I would say he is one of the simpler champions in the game, but I managed to find quite a few, so let's go through them from least to most useful. One really interesting hidden mechanic is that the Mighty Miner can pull a Mega Knight to the middle, but if you pop the ability as the Mega Knight is about to jump, the Mega Knight jumps onto his bomb and gets kited to the middle, where both towers can start hitting him. The reason this interaction is useful is because you can use the slightly high placement to pull any support cards to the Mighty Miner, and then use the ability to let both towers hit the Mega Knight. I think this is a really useful hidden mechanic, because if you place the Mighty Miner lower where the Mega Knight can attack him, any support cards like bats can bypass him, getting chip on the tower. But doing this allows him to kite the support cards and pull the Mega Knight to the middle. Another cool hidden mechanic with this card is that you can time the Mighty Miner ability just right to make it instantly teleport to the other side, if your opponent uses an attack that knocks him back, like the log. So if you play a bunch of swarm cards behind the Mighty Miner and you know your opponent is going to use the log, this is a great way to catch them off guard. And it's not just spells, even the Evo Mega Knight uppercut can make him instantly teleport, so this is something that you can actually manipulate in games. Another really useful hidden mechanic is the fact that the Mighty Miner bomb can actually knock the Evo Valkyrie so far back that she's outside her normal attack range, meaning that it can allow a Hog Rider to bypass straight to the tower, and the Evo Valk is forced to chase after it. And I know I've said this like 5 times already, but yet another useful mechanic is that skeletons can actually push the Mighty Miner, leading to a speedy Mighty Miner, which can catch your opponent off guard. And on top of that, it actually allows the Mighty Miner to go directly to the King Tower if you place skellies behind, instead of his curved path if you were to go normally to the King Tower. And finally, what I would say is the most useful hidden mechanic of all with this card is that if you time the bomb extremely precisely, the bomb can displace a building that was supposed to be placed in a position where the Mighty Miner previously was, meaning that you can displace a mortar or an X-bow and also get damage on defensive troops. A similar interaction can be seen with Rage, because the Rage itself has a hitbox when it's placed. I just think this mechanic is so cool, because I feel like not a lot of people would know that the bomb actually has a hitbox. An honorable mention for a hidden mechanic with this card is that the Evo Goblin Cage can actually grab him as he's about to hit the ability, which delays his ability to switch lanes, which is a useful mechanic if you're going up against this card, as it allows you to get a couple of extra elixir. Another cool hidden mechanic that benefits the defender if you're going up against this card is that if the opponent times the ability correctly to try to avoid vines, he still gets stuck in the vines, which is an extremely niche but still cool hidden mechanic. Next up is the Monk. The Monk has one of the most complex abilities of any champion in the game in my opinion, and there are so many hidden mechanics with this ability that I feel like not a lot of people know about. The main thing I see when I see people play this card is that they play Monk in front of pushes, so he can tank the Princess Tower and also reflect any projectile back onto the tower. And if people do accidentally end up putting the Monk behind a push, they often don't use the ability, because they think that he isn't able to do anything if something else is tanking, so they think that his ability would be useless. However, one thing I feel like very little players know about is the fact that the Monk ability actually has a small range around his character, which is really interesting, and I think Supercell gave him the small range to prevent large spells from missing him, because it's clear that sometimes a spell like Rocket is clearly not hitting his hitbox, but yet it still gets reflected. However, this range of his ability means that if the Monk is directly behind a tank like the Royal Giant, it actually means that he can still reflect projectiles that were targeted at the tank in front of him, leading to this really interesting interaction, since even though a troop would be clearly targeting something in front of him, they end up getting reflected by the Monk ability. However, the interesting thing is that this doesn't prevent the melee damage reduction, and the troop in front of the Monk will still take melee damage. It's just that his reflection radius for some reason extends beyond his hitbox. A well-known mechanic of the Monk is that he can interrupt a projectile if it's locked onto something else, like for instance an X-bow locked onto a tower. However, something that I find really interesting is that there is a hidden mechanic where if the monk is directly in front of the Expo, it actually won't deflect the Expo back onto itself. So you have to be really careful where you position the monk. Another cool hidden mechanic of the monk is that he can actually deflect a pancake from the royal chef to level up the king tower, which actually does buff the king tower, so it's not a visual glitch. A cool hidden mechanic with the normal monk outside his ability is that he can knock a Mega Knight back mid-air if his third attack is onto a jumping Mega Knight, which can actually save you from a Mega Knight locking onto your tower. Next up is the Skeleton King. I feel like a big reason the Skeleton King has so many hidden mechanics is because no one really plays the Skeleton King. And when they do play him, a lot of his interactions are always the exact same, so it's really difficult to uncover hidden mechanics. The first hidden mechanic I found with the Skeleton King is that he weighs either the same or more than the Mega Knight. The thing is, I don't actually know how much he weighs, but because he can push the Mega Knight, we have to assume that he probably weighs the same as a giant skeleton, which weighs the same as a Mega Knight. The reason this is so useful is because it means that the Skeleton King can push almost every card in the game except a golem, leading to some really odd interactions. The first one is that if you place a Skeleton King at the bridge behind something that's either the same weight or lighter than it, for instance a Mega Knight, then as the Skeleton King chases a defensive troop, he can push the Mega Knight towards the tower, allowing the splash of the Mega Knight and the splash of the Skeleton King to be exploited. This mass also allows the Skeleton King to full counter Ice Golem plus Hog Rider at the bridge if you place him precisely in the correct positioning, where the Hog Rider can't get around him because he's so much heavier than both the Hog Rider and the Ice Golem. And his splash allows him to hit both cards, making him almost a perfect answer to this push, assuming that the opponent doesn't support the Hog Rider anymore. Another application of this is that he can kind of body block an E-Giant, because they weigh around the same, and the Skeleton King's hitbox is big enough to partially stop the E-Giant, but I wouldn't really say this is as useful of a mechanic as what I described with the Hog Rider and the Mega Knight. A useful hidden mechanic of the Skeleton King that you can use against him is the fact that his ability skeletons are clones, instead of being normal skeletons, which means that spells like Goblin Curse can take them out instantly, which means you can actually counter the Skeleton King with just a well-placed Goblin Curse. What this means is that if you're playing Skeleton King and you know they have Goblin Curse, you would actually be better off not using the ability, not only saving Elixir, but actually making the Skeleton King more deadly to the tower. Next up is the Boss Bandit. A lot of the hidden mechanics with the Boss Bandit have to do with her ability, which to be honest is not what I expected, since I feel like the normal dash is pretty gimmicky. But one of the coolest hidden mechanics of this card is the fact that if you hit the ability to make her dash backward and the opponent plays a freeze at the exact same time, she still dashes back but is affected by freeze, which is actually really useful because it means that she can dash back into your tower's range to let your tower attack the opponent's troops, instead of her being stuck either on the opponent's side or in the middle, and this mechanic definitely wouldn't be possible with normal troops. Another cool hidden mechanic with her dash is that spells can't damage her twice, meaning that if your opponent places a log and you hit the ability, the log phases through her, which I guess gives you a little bit of an advantage, because it means she can just immediately dash back onto something even if a log was played. Another cool hidden mechanic is that if you hit the ability at the instant that she's about to begin her dash, she dashes and then immediately dashes back, making this really convenient, because you don't have to wait for her dash animation like you normally would, which can really catch your opponent off guard. A pay to lose mechanic with the Boss Bandit is that Zappies attack at just the right speed and they stun her just enough where she literally can't do anything against them because they keep resetting her dash. Another hidden mechanic with this card is that if a player pushes it with the Ice Golem or pushes her back so that she's around 5.5 tiles from another card, like for instance the cannon, she will bypass the cannon because her sight range gets messed up when she's being pushed, which in my opinion is a really dumb interaction due to a hidden mechanic. Next up is the Little Prince. The Little Prince has one main hidden mechanic that creates a lot of cool interactions with it. It is the fact that the Guardian is invincible while dashing, and actually counts as a troop, which I feel like not a lot of people know about, since I feel like most people think that the Guardian only becomes a real troop when it stops charging. One really cool way to abuse this mechanic is that you can protect a 1 HP Little Prince by using the ability at the exact same time that an Ice Spirit is deployed. Because the Ice Spirit jumps on the target that's closest to it, and also because the Guardian spawns from behind the Little Prince, the Ice Spirit locks onto the Guardian as it charges, resulting in the Ice Spirit jumping from where it was placed to where the Guardian finishes its charge, protecting the Little Prince. If the Guardian didn't count as a real troop, the Ice Spirit would simply jump onto the Little Prince. Another cool way you can abuse this mechanic is that you can actually lightning block with the Guardian if you time the ability extremely precisely, because as I said before, the Guardian is invincible during his charge, and because he naturally has more health than the Little Prince, he will always always take priority for lightning. So not only can it block a lightning shot, he also doesn't even end up taking any damage to lightning, which is literally a perfect interaction. Another cool mechanic that isn't as hidden is the fact that you can hit the ability as soon as he goes into a freeze, and he still spawns the Guardian once the freeze ends, which can sometimes be such a cop-out, because it can spawn once a freeze is over, to push back something like a giant skeleton that was connected to a tower. Next up is the Golden Knight. The Golden Knight's dash is one of the most inconsistent things in the game, to be honest, and so many hidden mechanics of his dash has already been uncovered, but I did manage to find some strange hidden mechanics with this card. One strange interaction that he has with the Evo Mega Knight is if you hit the ability as the Evo Mega Knight uppercuts him, he completes one dash, but as he falls down, the Evo Mega Knight uppercuts him again, keeping him stuck in a dash loop. Now to most people this would be a pay to lose interaction, since it makes your Golden Knight useless, but I actually think you can exploit this to ruin the Evo Mega Knight's uppercut ability on your win condition. For instance, if you play a win condition like Electro Giant and then Golden Knight into an Evo Mega Knight and force the Evo Mega Knight to target the Golden Knight, then you can use the ability and keep the Evo Mega Knight aggroed on the Golden Knight to let your E-Giant just walk past him, instead of the Evo Mega Knight constantly switching targets and making your push useless. And the thing is, if the Evo Mega Knight does lose aggro, it's still bad for the opponent, because the Golden Knight can just complete his dash, and even make it to the tower. Another interesting hidden mechanic with his dash has to do with the Little Prince. As I said before, the Little Prince Guardian technically counts as a troop, but if it pushes a charging Golden Knight that was locked onto the Little Prince, the Golden Knight just phases through the Guardian and can even make it to the tower, which to be honest I have no clue why this happens, but you can abuse this mechanic against the Little Prince. A cool hidden mechanic that you can abuse if you were to go up against the Golden Knight is if you place something that is at the edge of the Golden Knight's sight range but moves at a similar speed to him. If you hit the ability, he gets stun locked, because as his target moves, his sight range keeps getting adjusted, meaning that he gets indecisive about where to charge, because the target keeps moving in and out of his charge sight range. And I know this is the case because he actually keeps playing his soundtrack as he's in this stun lock. Which tells us that his charge animation keeps resetting. The thing about this mechanic is that it's really easy to abuse with larger tanks, so you can actually do it pretty consistently in games, and to my knowledge, they haven't patched it yet. Next up is the Archer Queen. One of the weirdest hidden mechanics of the Archer Queen is her sight range. Despite the Archer Queen having an attack range of 5.5 tiles, her sight range is at least 7 tiles I would say, because the Archer Queen is one of the only ranged cards that you can NATO to the opposite lane, and she will still come back to the same lane, because her sight range is that large. Another interesting thing about the Archer Queen is that being a champion, the troop itself appears to be pretty large, but the thing is, she is actually quite light, meaning that if you use the ability when something like a Mega Knight is in front of her, the Mega Knight can actually keep pushing her towards the tower. But the thing is, her hitbox is quite small horizontally, which means that the Mega Knight actually isn't able to deal damage to her. This is also the same reason as to why the Evo Barbs can push her over the river like I talked about in my video of hidden mechanics with evolutions. Those are the only hidden mechanics I could find for this card. If anyone does know any more, please do let me know in the comments. And finally, last up is the Goblinstein. The Goblinstein is the only champion where I genuinely could not find a single hidden mechanic for. Because it's a win condition, the playstyle of this card is generally pretty standard, so it's difficult to find cool hidden mechanics. But one interaction I did find is that the Goblinstein ability used to stack with the Rune Giant buff, meaning his ability would get a lot of extra damage on the tower if you used it correctly. Another interesting mechanic that this card used to have was that its ability didn't actually have a reduced Crown Tower damage stat to King Towers, which confuses me on how something like that was overlooked by the dev team. I hope you enjoyed this video though, thanks for watching.